Welcome to episode 27 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm interviewing Gordy Hoffman. He's the founder of the BlueCat screenwriting competition, and he's also a screenwriter and teacher. His screenplay, Love Liza, won the Waldo Salt Screenwriting Award at Sundance in 2002. He's a real artist and very inspiring, so stay tuned for that. I'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, Screencraft. Screencraft is dedicated to helping screenwriters master the craft of screenwriting and succeed in the business of Hollywood. Sign up for free education and inspiration at screencraft.org. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast. I'd like to thank Matt Hamby, Benjamin, Craig Mack, and Joshua Mills, who all retweeted episode 24 of the podcast on Twitter. These retweets really do help out a lot, so thank you very much for that. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on the blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode, so if you'd rather read the show or look at something later on, you can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay, and it's completely free. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. This week I'm interviewing screenwriter and BlueCat founder Gordy Hoffman. Here is the interview. Welcome, Gordy, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be here.
So to start out, I wonder if you can give us a quick overview of your career in the entertainment industry and kind of how you got to where you are today.
I think it started probably back about almost 20 years ago when I started writing a screenplay in Chicago. And for a long time, I struggled with the idea of starting to write a script. I mean, I don't know what my problem was. There was a lot of signs from the universe that I should write a script. And I had sort of a catastrophic event happen one summer. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was sort of a life-altering thing, and I just sort of said, okay, and I sat down and wrote Love Liza in about 2.5 weeks, and I wrote the first draft, and I went home to visit my mother, and my brother was there too, which was very odd. It was like Labor Day weekend, and I showed him the script, and because I just thought it was awesome, and I almost thought that I would want to play the lead character, and I let him read it, and he read it, and he was like, would like to do this, and this was September of 96, and he hadn't shot Boogie Nights yet, so that's how long ago it was. And what happened, he had worked with Paul on Hard 8, and then he was working with him that fall, and he showed Paul the script, and Paul liked it and sent it to Michelle Satter, who still to this day runs the feature lab there, the development lab. She's great, Michelle Satter, and I was a finalist. I didn't make it into the lab, but that started my sort of journey, and I came out to LA shortly thereafter, and we fought few more years to get the movie made. I signed with William Morris after I won the writing award at Sundance, and wrote a couple specs, went out, had some meetings. I directed my own independent feature. It was which was already in development before any of the Love Liza stuff happened. So I finished that film, and now I've just finished another short, and I've really moved away from chasing writing for hire, because I realized that my ultimate goal is to, I want to direct. I want to direct what I write. I want sort of Woody Allen's job, and Paul Thomas Anderson's job. And so I just sort of recalibrated everything and got sort of went back. Okay, now what the game plan is for that. So I'm finishing a short right now, and I'm going to write a feature with an actress, Abigail Spencer, who's done a number of things. She's one of the stars of Rectify on Sundance, and we're planning on shooting that next year. But so once I sort of pulled away from writing for hire and always sort of chasing that, it sort of helped. I had a spec at CAA a couple years ago, and it was just very, ultimately it wasn't very, it just didn't move very quickly. And I realized that, I wasn't getting any younger. And the fact is that I wanted to make my own films. And most of the problems that I had in terms of collaboration and stuff was when I had to sort of share the authoring responsibilities with somebody else, or have somebody be in charge of the story instead of myself, and that was so uncomfortable. So so that's sort of how I wish I'd known that like 15 years ago, but I've had a great career. I've had so many wonderful things happen, and I wouldn't trade it.
So let's talk about that. I remember when Love Liza came out, and it was very well received. I thought it was a great movie. What does a screenwriter's career look like after they have kind of if not maybe a huge commercial hit, certainly a critical hit? You said you signed with a big agency. What did your career look like? And then the final part of that is, why did you decide to stop chasing these paid jobs? Was it because you were spending a lot of time trying to get them and not getting them, or you were getting a few of them and they just weren't artistically or meaningful to you?
Okay. Well, going back to Love Liza, the industry's changed. That was a long time ago. It was like a lifetime ago, really, in terms of the industry, maybe even 3 lifetimes ago in terms of the industry. And it was a weird year because 2002 Sundance was right after 9/11. And so it was a weird Sundance. Nonetheless, Sony Classics bought it, and we started a relationship. My brother, Sony Classics, I think released like 4 of my brother's films, and Love Liza was sort of the first one. I had, to this day, I still have a relationship with them, and they're just great guys there. But it was a different time, and I'm not sure how things would translate now. But when I came back from Sundance, I thought that I won the Waldo Salt. I was one of the Buzz films. We got distribution, all the things. I had sort of the perfect Sundance, I guess we didn't win but for me as an artist, it was like, you can't really get anything else. As a writer, but then when I came back, people hadn't even seen the film. Most of the people that I had meetings with hadn't even seen the film. And I remember writing another spec right after that, and it was a very black comic spec, and I got a lot of relationships that I still have a couple of those relationships to this day. People still remember the spec, and they still know who I am and stuff. And they still haven't seen Love Liza. They never saw it. And so a lot of what happens in my experience with Sundance doesn't really translate. And Love Liza didn't do well in the box office. It was it was up against a lot of huge things at the end of that year, and it probably should have been released in early. it was one of those learning curve things where I think now they know to release a movie like Love Liza in maybe September or October and let people get a chance to see it, instead of just kind of putting it where it was at the end of the year. But anyways, it's weird. You think the perception of like when something like that happens is, you think, oh my God, I thought I was just going to come back to LA and just they were going to pull up with the Brinks trucks, and it was just so funny that like I would have to, but all the relationships happen. The guy that was Rob Carlson's assistant is Micah Sola, and he's one of the biggest, he's very successful agent, and he sells specs, and he was Rob's. I used to be on the phone with so those relationships that I have because of Love Liza, or the people that I can call on if I needed them, are there. So that is invaluable. You do have, you build sort of that sort of institutional, that industry thing, that memory, that institutional memory that you have with people, and people do remember if you write something special. So yeah, for me, it got, I had something that I wrote a spec that was really fantastic, and people were, basically CAA was like, we will send this out. And, we had some, I don't want to drop any names, but we had a couple but it was very difficult to even get the actor to read it, and it was just those issues of sort of, and I understand there's a lot of different things that if I was to say, I'm a director and I'm a writer, but I, like I said, I'm like, I want sort of Woody Allen's or Paul Thomas Anderson's job. So I think if you're just a writer, you're going to be able to apply yourself, the appeal. Like I had a meeting with a manager, very successful, really nice, very successful manager. And, he liked my script, and he wanted to develop something else, the same traditional route a lot of people take, which I encourage people to do. If you want to get somebody who's a fan of what you can do, develop an idea with them, and then they know the marketplace, and they can go out and, and it wasn't appealing to me because I realized that I didn't want to have to go through, it wasn't appealing anymore. I realized that the money or anything, I would rather teach and run BlueCat and do smaller things and build the directing, as opposed to chasing that sort of, because ultimately the spec, writing for hire and doing those jobs was ultimately a day. I looked at it as a day job to leverage into directing. So I realized I needed to kind of scrap my model. And I encourage anyone who ultimately wants to direct that you should just direct. And if it's a $300 iPhone, if it's a Vine, just start there and move forward and only direct. And if you think you can, I just think there's such an investment in time and focus. It's like saying, like, Kobe's like, well, to make money, I'll play baseball. It's just too hard. I think maybe for some people they're blessed or whatever, they're in the right place, the right time. And I've been in the right place in the right time too. But I think that if you want to be a writer for that, like writer for the studios, and you want to write for hire, and you want to be a professional screenwriter, then that whole investment is going to be there, and there is a track for that. But trying to facilitate and nurture that track, meanwhile, you want to also direct. To me, ultimately, it was like it didn't make sense anymore. And I realized that most of the times that I had like flare, any kind of conflict or any kind of rough or painful things were involved with writing for other people, and then getting into creative issues with them, and realizing that I don't want to do that, and I think that that's something that pro writers sort of are able to facilitate that and, fight for what they want, but they're also, that's that animal.
Yeah. If you listen to the John August and Craig Mazin podcast script notes, they're exactly what you say. You never hear them talking about spec scripts they write. They're always writing for hire, and they always are basically working for the producer, working for the director, and facilitating those ideas. And I totally agree. A lot of people getting into screenwriting, they don't realize what screenwriting really entails. It's not about your vision. It's about helping facilitate others people's vision, even though the vision oftentimes originated with you.
Yeah, and that to me is I think it's a fault of the fact that I've read so many scripts and I've learned so much about writing and how to fix things that I'm often in, it causes me consternation because I do see that. And, those guys, I'm about like writing the best story and impacting audiences and that's different. That's not necessarily the same thing as making money in Hollywood as a writer. Mm-hmm. That's not the same. There might be some overlap, but it's not the same. I mean, I think the John August podcast is awesome and people talk about it all the time and they love it. But they are sharing experiences on how to make money in the studio system. That's mm-hmm. and it's their experiences, and so some of those experiences aren't going to even jibe with other professionals that are not even listening. They don't even have time to listen to that podcast to mm-hmm. disagree with them or get on the board and disagree with them. They're busy doing it. A lot of things they do obviously are going to overlap, but I always tell people that, yes, you can love their podcast, but understand that they're sharing their experiences on how to make – they're not necessarily talking about writing the greatest movie because really if you're – like you said, if you're servicing a director or a director or a producer or a studio – that's your instincts are going to be ultimately sublimated to somebody else's, and your instincts might be violated in what you think would be a stronger emotional experience for your audience and a more original movie or anything that you think that your voice is going to be marginalized in that process. And but a lot of people are like, I want to make money in the studio system. Tell me where to go, where to sign up. Well, I know for myself that's not my end game. Because the money from Love Liza is long gone, but I still have. I had a high school student write me 6 months ago who said they have their poster on his wall and he loved the movie because he had problems with suicide. And his teacher in school had shown the movie, and he wrote me, and that's priceless. So that's mm-hmm. to me. I know, what do I want? The $1 million, you're going to spend the $1 million, but mm-hmm. You want to make movies that are going to last with people, and people are going to still be able, even if it's even if it is Hangover and people loved Hangover, whatever it is, you want to make movies that last with people, and I think both of those guys have written those types of movies too. So but I think. Anyway, so I'm going on and on.
Yeah. No. I think this is a great discussion. I wonder if we can take that next step, because I've thought a little bit about this too. I mean, what can a writer do? You mentioned someone like Woody Allen. I mean, I'm not sure how you go about getting that career, but for yourself, what are the steps you're going to take to try and accomplish this? Basically building a tribe of people that like Gordy Hoffman movies and creating that thing. What are some of the steps you've thought about to sort of facilitate your career in that direction?
Yeah. Well, Woody Allen, what happened with Woody Allen is he wrote a feature. It was produced. He hated how they changed it, but it made a ton of money. So they came back to him and they said, we want to be in the Woody Allen business. And his guys were like, he's not going to do that again. He has to direct. And they were like, okay. And then they did, and he still he made enough of a profit, and then he kept going. So his story is very traditional too. Screenwriters write a very successful movie, and then they're giving themselves a crack at directing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And the transition is not necessarily, like there's Coppola and, then there's other people, in terms of like being able to write for somebody else and then move on. Now, what was the second part?
Well, what are some of the steps that you're taking to try and facilitate your?
This is the thing. is, people need to understand that even in the, and this gets lost on people. They think there's everybody works from an assumption that they've written a product that is in demand, is the product that's in demand. But most often screenwriters have not written the product that is in demand, meaning they don't like your script. But the thing is, we're always talking about the underlying sort of incorrect assumption is that everybody's got a moneymaker sitting right there in their hard drive, and then we're always talking about the labyrinth to get there. So I always emphasize, and for me, I know that I believe that I can, that right now, me writing this feature for this project that I'm doing, the sky's the limit. I have the capacity, if I work hard enough, to make something that is, you look at it every year. People write small pictures. Dallas Buyers Club, it was a tiny film. It was made very low budget, under duress, money running out. The story of how, you should have that guy maybe try and get Craig Borton to talk, because he's got a great story about that, and he's fantastic. I could hook you up with him. He probably would talk about it, but it's an amazing story. But ultimately, the story and what they created with the script was, it attracted talent, for one, and then then it got an audience, and so. It sounds like sort of a weak answer, but it's the correct answer. Is, Love Liza fans are from what I created. It's really from what I wrote, and people didn't like it from what I wrote. And right now, my short, is like, people like my short. I wrote a really strong. I worked really hard on the script, and so I was able to attract a really good DP, and now I'm like attracting really good editors that have worked on studio pictures to work on my tiny thing. So so ultimately it goes back. I know that the power is in the script, and people often stop around the 20-yard line, and then they start to shop. And they start to send their queries, and they send it to the blacklist service or whatever to try and I got to figure this out. And it's really about everybody around you, wherever you are, has to say, that's the best script I've read in a year. And then when that happens, the market will find you. All you have to do is start to. That's why scripts slide all the way from Illinois and Virginia all the way to the system and all the way to the blacklist, because once they make something that just pops, then it's just, everybody has a brother-in-law that works at an agency in LA in all across the country. And people, and it's just, and the thing is that I'm not making this up. This is what's happened. I've seen it happen. The fact is that when the scripts come to the top of the pile in BlueCat, the agents, they all want to read the top scripts from BlueCat, and 2 out of 5 of our finalists are already signed. And we only send it to people that have sold material to the studios in the last 12 months. That's our list. So the people that sign them are the real, are doing the deals and are working, and so that's really what it is. It's like, I think that the focus needs to go back on craft, and making that. That's not new, people. The reason things have happened is that people write an astonishing spec script that makes everybody crack up. Or it just blows them away, or whatever. And those are the things that, one of our winners, BlueCat in 2006, he won in 2006. He wrote the Rodham spec script that was on the blacklist, and it's being made now and everything. But who would think to write a period biopic of Hillary Clinton from 1972 and think that that was going to solve your studio problems, or like, I want to get a professional career as a screenwriter. I'm going to write a period script about Hillary Clinton, but you know what? He wrote it. He's such a great writer. It was number 4 on the blacklist. I mean, so it was like everybody loved it. And it was really young, focusing on, I want to make this great. And then it took off regardless. I mean, if you had something that was even an accessible high concept or something, but he didn't even have that. And it was just the power of what he created. I know no one wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear something else, that nobody wants to be told you've got to work harder. But the fact is that it really is. And it's so gratifying as you push that script to a better place. And when everyone around you is like, I don't know what to tell you. That thing's great, and you really have, it's hard to give notes to your script. Then you have something that's going to be unstoppable because other people are going to feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk a bit about I think it's a bit about your teaching career. You mentioned you had taught at USC. You do seminars and workshops around the country. Maybe you can talk just a little bit about that and give us some of the just some general sort of tips and common problems that you see. And I guess this will speak to what you just said in terms of writing a better script. What are some tips and common problems you see from all the teaching that you've done?
Right. Well, I think the thing that everybody struggles with, and I struggle with, and I think movies that win the Oscars, and that I look at them and I see that those scripts struggle with being emotionally available in your writing and making the strongest choices for being sort of emotional content. When we write confrontations, when we write heartbreak, when we write, tragedy, or we write anything, even really good comedy hurts, like Bridesmaids, it's so uncomfortable. It's so hilarious, but it's like cringeworthy, because it's so honest. That stuff people like, that's the work of writing. I mean, it's so easy to get out of, and there's a lot of big filmmakers that we don't really know, that are not, you would not say don't tell personal stories, or you don't feel like they're accessing their person to share with us, because it's so difficult, it's so demanding. Who wants to sit down and be like, I want to like crack my heart open and tell you what I really know about these certain things. And I think that audiences love those, my brother was so, that's what how my brother operated, and that's why people were so, devastated, because they felt so close to him, because he always operated by that sort of commitment to, I don't care what this looks like. I'm just going to like tell you, what this is, and I feel like that's the thing that I think, writers just dodge that stuff. They just write around those scenes. And I'm not sure, it's hard to sort of, without, specific examples, but, honestly, it's like, that's what I find. It's like people are just sort of, they're a little bit tepid about their choices, and they just don't sort of know, in Argo, it won Best Picture, but we really never understood, what made that guy tick, like really why he needed to go back and get those hostages. He made that, I'm going to go get the hostages, and we're like, okay. But I was like, we want more. If we had more about like why you feel a need to do this, and show that sort of the despair and the broken, something, or the fact that he can't relate, or why his marriage failed, or some more stuff that we would connect to, then, the emotional payoff of Argo wouldn't be about releasing the tension over our anxiety over we're going to get beheaded or something. It would have been even more gratifying, because we would have felt more connected. And I feel like even in a movie like that, they just didn't, that there could have been more there. Obviously 12 Years a Slave, didn't have that problem. They were all in, and they were not trying to diminish or compromise any of the emotional truths of any of that. And that's why some people who wanted to watch that movie, it was very challenging, but ultimately it's very gratifying to watch, because we felt like there was something cathartic about watching it, because it was part of our nation's history and our people's history. So that's really that's, to me, I think, is the deal breaker, is if you can ask yourself about your script, how can I bring more of myself, not autobiographical, or not, I'm not saying, oh, there needs to be a scene where people are crying, but just, what is because some people translate emotion into like melodrama, but I'm just saying it could be anything. It could be humor, it could be action, it could be anything, but how can you bring more expose yourself more in what you know about the emotional language of your script? That's where I think people that's the work of writing. I feel like getting into that headspace of your characters and the moments and being able to like write that. So it was very difficult, because it often is very uncomfortable. But that's really I think that's the big deal breaker with a lot of scripts. There's a lot more that I could talk about. We could go, for a few hours.
Yeah. But just to hit on that, how can you, as a writer, access that stuff and get to that honesty? You just asked the question, get to more, but how can you, do you have any tips, exercises? How can a writer do that?
Well, I think, obviously, one of the things is you want to make sure that you love all your characters, that you have compassion and you love all your characters. Now, a lot of people, they put that filter on their script, and they'll find that half their characters, they don't even like them, because they're sort of the bad guys. And so once you sort of have compassion for all of them, then you start, and through that compassion, you start to understand each character in the way that, like, I can see how they would make that decision. And that will start to imbue all your characters' actions, will probably start to shift what they say and do, and your story will probably start to shift into a more human and a more realized picture, a more big picture, a more Shakespearean picture. I always say that Shakespeare didn't dislike any of his characters. He wrote, that's why he wrote some of the greatest, Lady Macbeth, and because he felt for them, he understood where their madness had gone, so that, and I think that you looking in each moment and being like, well, what would really happen if I was there? A lot of people write scripts and they're like, I'm writing a movie, I'm trying to write something to sell, I'm trying to write a spec, and they just don't. And the fact is that when we settle back into like, what would I do, or what would really happen here, and just don't worry about what it looks like. How many more blogs and podcasts and interviews do we have to read about people that win Oscars, people that, that go, well, I just decided to write what I wanted to write. We've just heard that Paul Haggis has those stories. And it's like everybody has those stories. We've heard them too many times, but we forget. It's like, just write what you care about, and definitely get out of the, So those are the things that I would sort of start looking at. So your relationship to the characters, where are you, and are you actually because those emotional, truthful moments will happen if you actually ask yourself, what would really happen? Like, is this, or am I just writing movie BS because I've seen so many Ben Stiller pictures, and I really like Ben Stiller. I think he's cool. I just think, and he's a very successful businessman, and he does a lot of things, but clearly, and he's probably as frustrated as we all are at sometimes. He goes, God, that's a silly, that doesn't make any, but if you're on the other side and you've got the thing is, the spec script has to be special. If you want to attract somebody, it's almost like then something else starts to happen. But that would be the thing, as I would just use your head and be like, what would really happen? And what do you know? Is there anything that you know about this? I mean,
You mentioned when we started the interview, you mentioned Love Liza and some personal experience. Do you think bringing in these personal experiences, did you have some experience with someone who had suicide and sniffed gasoline?
No, it was really more of a choice of I had an idea about a guy who starts to sniff gasoline and he's sort of normal, and then I thought, what would make a person do that? And then I thought that maybe this suicide of a wife but then you look at it later and you're like, well, where am I in it? It's just but what I did is that when I was writing Love Liza, I let it go where it was going to go, and you can sort of tell it has this journey feel. And I said, what would happen? What could happen? What would be the next moment? Love Liza is a very different piece from a lot of things that we might see, in that it's a character piece and it's just driven by the actions of a guy in a certain chapter of his life. And so it's easier to write organically, and it's like, well, what would he do next? And that was really what I was thinking, was like, what's next, and not thinking beat sheet, not thinking act break, not, I had some act breaks in my mind vaguely, but I was really just about like, well, if he did this, he would do this next. And that kept it kept my voice in there because of like my, experiences, I guess, with maybe, being sober or not, not being sober or whatever. And so, yeah, so it was, so I think that's really what it was, but that's what I mean. It's a good example because people don't have to, it doesn't have, like, I did not know anybody who committed suicide, and I had never attempted suicide myself. I'd never really huffed gas, and so, you can imagine a lot of things and create you could create a world of stories, but you can still bring your own sense of truth and into these moments. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So let's talk a bit about the BlueCat screenwriting competition. Obviously, that's a big part of what you've done. Can you kind of give us the 2-minute elevator pitch on that competition and sort of how it runs and what that's all about?
Okay. Well, we got over 5,000 screenplays last year. We're one of the top screenplay competitions in the world. We accept features and shorts. We have pretty sizable prizes, 15,000 for the feature winner, 10,000 for the shorts winner. And then the one thing that's a longstanding tradition with BlueCat is we give everybody a set of a written analysis of your script. So if you send a shorter feature, you're going to get between 400 and 600 words approximately of feedback. So a lot of people use it for that, and they get that. And then we, basically that's it. And then, but we have had a really good track record of, because I'm a writer and I teach writing and I've, been judging BlueCat the whole time. I have always been able to, we've had a good track record. I mean, we have a long list. You can, do research on us, and every year, going back, we have a lot of, the Aaron Guzikowski who wrote Prisoners was one of our finalists, when he was struggling. And, so we're able to identify and nurture and support people. So we have a good eye for material, and the industry looks out for what they always look for, our top scripts. And so yeah, but it's, we are for the writer. I'm a writer. I think we're definitely one of the only competitions I think you can find that's run by a writer and who has experience, and also teaches, and and I think that all those things sort of make people comfortable with BlueCat, but a lot of other competitions are great too. Austin, Sundance, Nichols, of course, and others. So.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that impressed me, I was on your About page, and just the sort of the transparency. I really like the fact that you listed some of your readers. I wonder if you can speak about that. How do you find your readers? What are their qualifications? And what is the specific process? Does a reader read always was going to read the entire script? 2 readers read the entire script? What's just sort of the process of once someone enters the things? What does the vetting process look like?
Well, we screen everybody initially through their resumes and make sure that they have either professional experience or a film degree, and that just cleans out a lot of resumes. And then the next thing we do is we give them a test script, and we basically have them do what we want them to do for BlueCat. So I have read the test script, and then I look at their analysis, and it's up to me. So basically, I'm looking for people that have a very high standard of, readers. They come from everywhere, but as long as they're up to my standards and the standards that sort of have been, we have evidence of those standards working, because you can see all the people that we, and then they read. Then each script gets read by a reader, and they read obviously the whole thing. Again, we're one of the only competitions that, other major competitions, I would trust all of them to have read their, but we actually provide evidence. So that your script has been read by someone completely. And then those, then all the scripts are read, and they're given scores. And then at the end of the day, we start moving them on and eliminating. And that's basically how it is. But BlueCat is, we are transparent. What does the scorecard look like? That is it a thumbs up, thumbs down? Is it a rating? It's a rating of 10 on 6 different things, which is character, story, dialogue, clarity, originality, and maybe description. There's like six things, and the reader gives it 1 to 10. And we don't share the scores with the writers, because we did that a few years back for a second, and everybody started to become obsessed with the scores. And I was like, it's an internal thing for us to help us. But we want people to focus on writing. We want people to look at their notes, and we don't want them to look at, I got a 6, because it's too, it doesn't do anything for the development of the writer. Like, well, I gotta, it's sort of like, I was like, that's not BlueCat. So we do, it helps us to organize things, but ultimately,
unless you have ratings of other scripts, your ratings in a bottle have no meaning whatsoever, because you don't know. A 5 might be good, it might not be good. It depends on what the other scripts got, really.
It's just like getting film reviews. It's like I got rave reviews for Love Liza, and I got total pans, and neither of them, they were just personal feelings about the movie. It's not a masterpiece, I couldn't agree. Everybody just had and so the numbers, it's just not, there's no end, there's the end game. It's just like, it doesn't, you can't go anywhere with the numbers. Oh, I got a 9. Oh, I got a 2. Both of them are sort of damaging, it's like, we don't really want that. It's just, we want you to look at the notes and move on,
So I wonder, I kind of get a sense of what you're going to say to this, but I wonder if there's any tips you have for people, entering contests, the BlueCat specifically, or anything. Do you find that some scripts fare well in competitions, but maybe they're not production, they're not so maybe not fare so well at a production company, but they might do well at a contest, or just, write the best script you can write? And I'll give you some examples. I think The Blacklist is a prime example. There have been some scripts on there, and you read them, and it's like, this is great writing. And I'll give you one example is, The Beaver was one, and Crazy Stupid Love. Those are 2 scripts that I read. I didn't see the movie The Beaver, but it didn't do well. But Crazy Stupid Love is one I read, and I went and saw the movie, and the script is fantastic. It's like, the guy is really a great writer, but I don't think, I watched the movie and I was like, it was okay. it was perfectly good. And I don't think this is an example of where the studios, destroyed the script. It's just an example where sometimes good writing doesn't mean good movie, or great writing doesn't mean great movie. It was a good movie, but it was not a great movie. But the script was awesome.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that people are putting in their scripts emotional language and great writing that's creating a feeling when you're reading it that's not able to be shot with a camera. I mean, that I've looked at some blacklist scripts, and you start reading them, and the people love the scripts, and all I have to do is read a page, and you can see that that the language in the description and how things are sort of being played, we're not going to see any of that on the screen, but it's creating an experience for the reader that's very positive. And I think that that's probably a lot of times people, I don't know what happened. And you're right to say, I don't think the studio ruined the script. It was just, it wasn't a script that was meant. That doesn't make it, to me, that doesn't make any sense. The fact is that probably how he wrote it, it just had this appeal in the way that he was expressing it. But when you actually shot the actions of the story, the narrative, and you actually produced it, it lost a lot of its power because the language in which, that the writer was employing in the script, that's what's happening. And when I see that happening in a script that doesn't advance in BlueCat, because I'm like, this is, there's some magic going on here with the writing, but it's a dysfunctional screenplay because it's not, Hitchcock was like, it has to be shot. You only put things in that can be shot in a screenplay. And when a writer gets authorly, and a writer with a capital W, and there's those little things, a lot of people go, wow. And then it's only because they've read it, and they've sort of been intoxicated and charmed by the expression on the page. And that's not just like, inaccurate description. It just happens. It happens like that. And I think that that's what it is. I think that when readers and blacklist scripts and sort of sexy scripts people are like, oh my God, read the script. It's like, take a second look and make sure that there's not some other thing going on in the writing. Sometimes the writers will kind of connect the dots in the script for the audience in a way that's really kind of like a wink, or, just things that just make it fun to read, but ultimately it's death. It causes great dysfunctional problems when it actually is produced. So I think that's what the difference is. I don't think anything's scripts can get really popular, but if they don't, and I don't think that I know that professionals, industry people don't necessarily know that that's happening. They don't see that stuff. And if you are thinking in that way, and I think it's just my experience of teaching and reading and teaching and reading and talking to people and thinking about things, that I'm able to kind of realize it's like, okay, some of this is happening. Because, it used to be like, oh, that was a great script and they ruined it. The producers ruined it. And I realized that, like you did, that it's like, I don't think that that's what's happened. It's like, I think the script might not have been written with, strip away everything. You just got to make sure that it's just story. The writer's ego it can't be found in a screenplay. It's just not that form. So. Mm-hmm.
So, well, this has been a great interview, Gordy. I really appreciate it. You've dropped a lot of knowledge, very, very informative. I know I've learned a lot as a screenwriter. What's the best way for people to keep up with you and contact you if they want to just follow along with what you're doing?
Well, just go to the BlueCat website. If you just Google BlueCat, it's bluecatscreenplay.com. And, like any workshops that I do, we have a blog, and you can sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter is great. We just put tips and script downloads, and you can join the newsletter on our site. It's one of the best newsletters. People often say that. I'm not just saying that, but people often say that, and it's fantastic. So, and we work really hard. We just like to be there so yeah, BlueCat the BlueCat site is where they can find them.
And are you on Twitter too? You want to give your Twitter handle?
Yeah, it is. It's a weird handle. I made it like back in the dark ages of Twitter before I realized I should have just had my name or something. It's fireman in Italian. It's so stupid. It's Vigile del Fuoco. I can.
You know what? I'm going to put all this in the show notes. We won't even bother with that one. I'll put everything in the show notes. And
I tweet. I haven't been tweeting in the last few months because of, what happened with my, the loss of my brother, and it felt awkward. So there's not a lot, I don't have a lot of activity on there, but it should probably start to pick up a little bit. I can start talking to people there, but
and the
people
blog
can
is
reach out to me if they want to write through the BlueCat site and ask me any questions or anything I said was confusing or whatever. Just, I'll get the email. Just write me.
Perfect. So, well, thanks again, Gordy. As I said, this has been a great interview. You've been very, very, very informative, giving us a lot of great information.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm going to be running another online class called Writing a Great Second Act for Your Screenplay. Many scripts die quickly in the second act, even after a very promising first act. Having a terrific second act is what separates the novice writers from the professionals. So if you're struggling with your second act, hopefully this class can help you. The live class will be Saturday, July 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/classes. But if you can't make it to the live class, don't worry. I will be recording the class so you can listen to it later on. In fact, all the classes that I've done through SYS Select are recorded and are available to SYS Select members to watch anytime they'd like. The two most recent classes are How to Make the Opening Pages of Your Screenplay Awesome and How to Write a Killer First Act for Your Screenplay. So this class on the second act is following along in that series. SYS Select members get access to all the old classes as well as the live classes each month. To learn more about SYS Select, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/classes. I also run a general screenwriting Q&A before each class. So if you have any screenwriting related questions, anything really, I'll be available to answer those questions a few minutes before the class. Once again, I want to thank Screencraft for sponsoring this episode. They're currently accepting submissions for their comedy screenplay contest. They have a great lineup of judges, some of the best comedy producers in the business. The deadline for entry is August 1st. Check out screencraft.org if you have a comedy screenplay you'd like to enter. In this week's Writing Words section, I want to talk about a few things that Gordy said. I hope everyone who listens to this is as inspired by that interview as I am. Gordy really gave us some great information and some great inspiration. What's ironic is when he talks about making sure we as writers have an emotional connection with our audience, he's actually having an emotional connection with me, which is fantastic. This idea of having an emotional connection with your audience really resonated with me. I recently taught a class in the SYS Select program where I analyzed the first 5 or 6 pages of several great screenplays. The scripts I looked at are Legally Blonde, Shawshank Redemption, Natural Born Killers, and Lethal Weapon. I had seen the movies and probably even read some of the scripts, but when I just sat down and read the first 5 pages of each one, it really struck me how well these writers were able to evoke some real genuine emotion from me as a reader. I recorded the class, so you can go back and listen to it through SYS Select if you'd like. But even if you don't, go and read the first 5 pages of these screenplays. All the scripts are available for free in the SYS script library. I totally agree with Gordy. Establishing this emotional connection with the audience and really evoking some genuine emotion in them is the most important thing you can do as a writer. Forget about structure or character or dialogue or anything else. If you can evoke some real genuine emotion from people when they read your work, you'll be very successful as a writer. So I want to move on to another point that Gordy made, and that was about focusing on what you really want and going after that instead of spending time pursuing something that you hope will eventually lead to what you want. In some cases, this might work, but as a rule, I think Gordy is absolutely correct. Spend your time pursuing the exact thing you want. His decision to spend his time trying to be a director is a great lesson for all of us. I struggle with this myself. My last film was a low-budget martial arts action film, and suffice it to say, it ain't art or even close, and writing that sort of film isn't why I wanted to become a screenwriter. Many of the writing assignments that I've been talking to producers about lately are this sort of genre film that's pretty schlocky. I always rationalize to myself that I just need to do this and hope that one of these films breaks out or is at least a modest success so I can get my career to the next level and hopefully pursue the projects that I want to pursue. But realistically, I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. I should be writing the types of scripts that I want to write and that I'm passionate about, not schlocky genre films. It really starts out, though, with figuring out what you want. Gordy seems to have done that. He's crystal clear on what he wants out of his career. He wants to have a career like Woody Allen. And that's important because once you know what you want, then you can figure out the best way to do it and to get to that place. And hopefully you can push all the distractions aside and really go for it. And again, I struggle with this myself, so I know it's not easy. There's a million very good reasons to settle and take the path of least resistance. Interviewing Gordy reminded me why I wanted to be a screenwriter in the first place, and hopefully I can put at least some of that into practice, and hopefully sooner rather than later. And hopefully others can too. So that's the show. Thanks for listening.